I'm actually mourning the loss of the last 30 years of my life that I spent suffering, truly. And I felt hopeful. When I met Liam, there was an instant connection. And I think when people have OCD and they find someone else that also does, there's this instant bond of like,
huge.
Where have you been my whole life? Oh, you do that too? And it's so refreshing. And I'll speak for myself. I just felt drawn to him the whole time because I felt comfortable in his space.
Yeah.
So.
Basically, I'm a hero. I feel like some of this.
To put too fine a point on it.
I'm Alicia.
And I'm Liam. We both have OCD. And instead of spiraling alone, we decided to turn our symptoms into a podcast. You're welcome.
Here, we overshare real stories, laugh through the anxiety, and talk to actual experts who can explain why your brain keeps asking, what if I accidentally marry my cousin?
Whether your thing is hand washing, mental rituals, or just silently panicking during normal conversations, congrats. You have found your people.
This is a safe place, unless you're an intrusive thought, in which case, get in line, buddy. We're booked.
So grab a weighted blanket, cancel your plans for the 5th time, and let's dive in. This is the OCD Confessional.
And yes, we did check this recording 4 times before uploading it.
Today on the OCD Confessional, we are joined by Dr. Alicia Coyne, a licensed clinical psychologist who has spent nearly 20 years helping children, teens, and families improve their mental health. She's an assistant professor at Harvard Medical School in the Division of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, where she founded the McLean Child and Adolescent OCD Institute, known as OCDI Jr, and continues to serve as a senior clinical consultant at McLean Hospital. Dr. Coyne is a past president of the Association for Contextual Behavior Science, and she serves on the Clinical and Scientific Advisory Board of the International OCD Foundation, a favorite of ours here. She's also a prolific author with dozens of peer-reviewed articles and several books, including The Joy of Parenting, Stuff That's Loud, A Teen's Guide to Unspiraling When OCD Gets Noisy, Stop Avoiding Stuff, and most recently, Tired of Teen Anxiety, A Young Person's Guide to Discovering Your Best Life. We are so excited to have her here to share her expertise and help us all better understand OCD. Dr. Alicia Coyne, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
We are so excited
pleasure.
to have you.
Total pleasure being here. Thanks to you both for having me.
Let's dive right in with kind of the question right off the top, which is, what drew you to studying OCD over all the other disorders you can find in the DSM?
It's really funny because starting to study OCD was a divergence. I used to study childhood aggression, and I thought that that would be my whole career. But when I went to Brown to finish my doctoral training, my postdoctoral training, I thought I needed to round out my training with learning how to treat anxiety disorders, and I landed in the pediatric anxiety research clinic there, and I fell in love with working with OCD. And one of the things that drew me to it was, number one, the treatment for OCD is an evidence-based treatment, which means that it works. And when you have a tool like that, it's an incredible experience to trust the treatment, right? But number two, it was the people, right? It was working with all of these kids and families who, you know, you would see them do these incredibly brave things and face these deep fears with just such utter courage. It was the most beautiful thing. And when they did that, they would start to get free of feeling so stuck with the OCD. And it was incredibly inspiring. Like these kids, watching these kids and teens do this taught me so much about bravery and courage. And I was hooked.
You also shared a little bit about your own experience with it. Is that something that you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure, yeah. So this is kind of really interesting, but I had my daughter. So I have 2 kids. My daughter's 26 and my son is 20, and they're fabulous. And I had Josie when I was in graduate school and while I was studying psychology. And as it happened, right after I had her, I noticed that when I was going back to work, I would have these really frightening images flash into my mind of bad things happening to the baby, like she could choke or she would fall and crush her skull. And
Oh,
I remember I used to commute. I drove all over. I went to grad school in Mississippi, and I drove all over like the Mississippi Delta to work in these Head Start programs. And the images were so compelling and vivid. I'd almost drive off the road, like, you know. And I was like, what is this? And I had no idea. I thought this was like, I mean, it's first child. I thought this is normal. This is what happens. You worry about your baby and all of this.
mhm.
And I had a sense that, like, I knew conceptually that, like, if you're anxious about something, you should still keep doing what you're doing. You should still go to work. You shouldn't. But I would call and check. She okay? She okay? And I would try to do it in these sneaky ways. Now, at the time, I did not realize, even as a doctoral student in clinical psychology, that this was postpartum OCD, because I don't think that there was much written about it at that time. And when I talked to my doctors about this, they were like, well, I don't know what it is. Do you want like
Yeah.
an SSRI? I mean, you're the expert here. And I'm thinking, I'm not an expert here. I don't know what you're talking about. So fast forward, and like the pieces started getting put together, and I was like, oh my gosh, right? And I thought it had gone away. But then later on, after the pandemic, it was so funny. I was just talking to a colleague of mine who's another clinical psychologist with expertise in OCD. I got super burned out during the pandemic, and I got very, very concerned. I'm still very concerned about climate change, but it got to be this fever pitch that I had to be doing all the things to make sure, that I was helpful in this area, right?
Yeah.
I remember I got up at 4 a.m. once a week for like 10 weeks to take this course on how do you get trained to teach prosocial behavior, so that we can make global changes in people's consumption and things like that, so you can combat climate change. And I also noticed that I would get very, like, excessively upset if I thought that I had harmed someone, if someone thought that I wasn't ethical in some way, if someone thought that I had broken a rule. It was just so, I couldn't stop thinking about it. And I realized later, I'm like, oh my God, this is like moral scrupulosity, OCD. I treat this. Wow, do I have this?
Which is
And
another
I think the
variation of
answer is
OCD
yes.
that a lot of people are unaware of, right?
Right.
What are the different variations of OCD? Do you have an
There are,
explanation?
oh my gosh, there's so many. So OCD, can we back up though? Because I think OCD, the important thing.
Yeah,
like,
what is
OCD?
OCD? Let's start there.
Right?
Let's back up.
101.
Right. So OCD has two pieces, right? It has obsessions, and obsessions are recurrent intrusive thoughts, but they can also be a feeling of incompleteness, a feeling of disgust, a feeling of not just rightness, things that are hard to put into words, right? But it's some sort of private event that you're experiencing inside, thought, feeling, experience, that you just do not want to have. It's really aversive to you, right? And so what do you do when that shows up? Well, you do something to make it stop, to go away, to fix it, right? That's called a ritual or a compulsion. And rituals or compulsions are behaviors that either you can observe. For example, if I think I've harmed somebody, I might ask you guys, did I hurt somebody? Did I offend you? Did I say the wrong thing? And then you might say, Lisa, you're fine. You didn't do it. And then I'll feel better. But that won't be enough, because that thought's going to pop up again, and I'm going to ask you again, and it's going to pop up again, because there's a relationship between these two. These behaviors work. They work in the short term. They give you a little moment of relief. But the problem is they basically make the problem bigger. The more you do compulsions and rituals, the more you have to do them.
Isn't
Right?
that defeating?
It's so defeating. And there's one other important piece here, right? So rituals can be things that you do. They can be thinking rituals. So they can be things that other people would never know, right? Mm-hmm. Yep.
Hands up here.
Same. And I think that they're extremely common. And I think that this is why, for some of us with OCD, it's really hard. Number one, it gets misdiagnosed all the time. And number two, it's hard to tell if you have it. because it's very subtle. Like I might be giving myself reassurance and you guys wouldn't know that I haven't said something stupid, and I might be rehearsing in my head the scene, like remembering it over and over again to check, did I say something wrong? Right? And that's a ritual too. And that tends to get misdiagnosed as things like generalized anxiety disorder or just ignored.
While you were talking about that, it just occurred to me how often I'm checking my text messages, not to see if I have a new text message, but reading ones I've sent and
Oh my
checking
gosh.
them to make sure I didn't offend
Oh,
someone
I
in
do
that
that.
text. They haven't responded yet. Why haven't they responded yet? Did I make a grammatical error here that makes me look like an idiot? I spend a lot of my day checking
Yep.
my text messages. That just occurred to me. That's probably another thing that
Could be.
is OCD related.
Another one is apologizing, like compulsively, and that's one that other people notice that I did. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's like a tick at this
Yeah.
point. It's just so second nature, and they'll stop
Yeah.
apologizing.
That's that moral scrupulosity OCD that
Correct.
you're talking about. You've, I'm sure, encountered, as a result of your work, hundreds of cases at this point.
Yes.
Obviously, you can't break HIPAA. We're aware of that. But what are
Yeah.
some of the more extreme cases you've encountered or studied? Because I do think that there's this misconception, and part of the reason Alicia and I wanted to do this show, there's this misconception that it's not that big of a deal. OCD's not that hard, and it is super debilitating, especially
Can
in
be.
some of these extreme cases.
I completely agree. So I'll try and I'll try and speak in general terms. And so there are many forms of OCD, and of course I've seen tons of them over the years. And among the ones that people are really scared to talk about, and there's a lot of shame around them, and that frequently get diagnosed, are when people have recurrent images or recurrent intrusive thoughts or images about harming others, right? Either in physical harm or sexual harm or breaking a taboo, right? And I have had people interview me as a clinician and potential clients and say, is there anything I could say that would make you like not want to see me?
Mm-hmm.
Right, because they're so scared, and because they may have already talked to other practitioners who don't know OCD well,
Mm-hmm.
who are like, what are you telling me? And they feel shamed.
Yeah.
And it's heartbreaking because there's nothing shameful about having these thoughts, right? So that's one form.
Can I ask you something on that
Yeah,
before we?
sure.
What is the likelihood of someone acting out their intrusive thought? And can we ease that? Because I think a lot of
Yeah.
people that don't have OCD and don't have these harmful thoughts may still worry about someone that is admitting to
Yes,
having
I
that.
know.
And I saw something recently. I can't remember exactly what they said, but it helped me understand that the likelihood of that happening is not any more than someone that doesn't have OCD.
100% correct. It's extremely low. And I can give you two examples that pop into my mind immediately. One, I didn't know what it was. I was a student, I was a doctoral student, and I had a young man come to see me. I was working in a primary care setting, and he came, his wife asked him to come in because he kept having recurrent intrusive thoughts about harming his infant,
Mm-hmm.
right? Now, I didn't have any training on OCD at the time, so I did what most people would do. I interviewed around harm, and I suggested that he, go and get an interview at an ER, right? Go be evaluated to make sure that he wasn't a danger to the infant. If I had seen him now, I would have told him he had OCD and it was going to be okay, and
Yeah.
come see me next week. And I would have sent him to, for example, the IOCDF website, done a lot of psychoeducation, and eased his mind that having a thought, right, does not mean you're going to do an action. A second one, I was as a postdoc, and I was actually working at Rhode Island Hospital in the OCD clinic, and I was working in the consult and liaison service at the hospital. And a young child came in, and he had recurrent, really terrifying thoughts about harming his dog, like gutting his dog. And they wanted me to come in and evaluate him to see if he was a harm. And I was like, Nope, not at all. I just like he really wasn't. The poor kid.
He loves
was
his dog.
terrified, right?
Right.
And one thing that is a clue, if there are practitioners listening, is that they just pop into your head. We are not in charge of whether they come. But they come with a sense of, oh God, why am I having that thought? That's terrifying, right? It's not an urge to go harm someone. It's the thought. It's the idea that, well, maybe I might. And how many people, like, have you guys ever had the experience of, like, when you're like on a tall building, there's dogs barking? Can you hear them? I'm sorry.
First of all, I love that the dog is barking during the story about killing a dog.
I know.
Because they're like,
they're upset.
They're
And
aware.
I don't know why
They're
my
aware.
door is open. I'm gonna go close that in a minute. Like most people have had the experience, right, where you're at a tall thing and you're like, "What if I jump? I could fall." You know?
Oh, every time I'm
just
high, yeah, it happens. Mm-hmm.
And so there's one really important thing I want to say, right? Do you guys know what's different between people with OCD and people without? Like, so let's.
They don't
want
to have the thought.
Well,
Like in that moment, in this scenario, you're saying, like, what would it be the difference in thought?
No. Let's think about this, right? So, like, these kinds of thoughts, right? So there have been several studies comparing people with OCD and people without OCD to see who has more of these kind of wild thoughts that just pop into their minds. Who do you think has more thoughts? People with or people without?
With.
Guess what? We all have the same frequency. There is zero difference.
They just
Everybody
theirs
has
goes away faster.
bingo.
Yeah, we ruminate on
Ours gets stuck.
stuck.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the only difference. So I think a lot of people with OCD, when they have these kinds of really disturbing thoughts, they're like, well, why am I having that thought?
That's
What's wrong
comforting
with
to
me?
know.
Isn't it?
It
Yeah.
really is. The only
It's really
difference is my
important.
brain doesn't see it go
Yes.
away. It just hangs on to that, makes me sick to my stomach, and then the shame piles on for even having the thought. Now I'm trying to calm myself down.
Yeah, so much
Exactly.
better.
Exactly. You're all better. But yeah, but it's really important, and that's one of the things that I tell people.
That is really interesting. I mean, to me,
Great.
one of the most
Yeah.
heartbreaking OCD obsessions is the pedophilia OCD. And yeah, it's along the lines of harm OCD, where what an incredibly horrible condition to experience that, the level of shame that must come with that, and then to go to your therapist and wonder, can I express this? Am I going to be potentially reported
Correct.
for the? I just, that one to me in particular is just so heartbreaking.
It is
Yeah.
incredibly heartbreaking. And some years ago, I helped a Harvard student with her thesis on this. And it was such a challenge to figure out how we could gain women's trust, to get them to tell us if they had thoughts like this, because of the fear of, someone who doesn't know about OCD reporting them, taking their child away, right? I mean, and that's a really real fear. And that is a very common, extremely common.
Is it really?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, and it's one of the most frightening for people to talk about.
Well,
Could you imagine the
hearing that
harm?
alone is hopefully going to give people the courage to express that without shame and fear, because
Agree.
it's really important to understand that.
I think this podcast is amazing that you guys are doing this. I think really, opening up and talking about these things is so important. Checking in with the International OCD Foundation, getting educated, and really finding practitioners who know what they're doing. And there are a few questions I would ask if you were interviewed. Like if you're thinking, listening to this going, I'm going to go call a therapist. Here's some good questions. How do you treat OCD? Number one. What % of your practice is individuals with OCD? And you want a high percentage.
Great
right?
question. Mm-hmm.
Tell me about what treatment modality do you use? And if they say cognitive behavioral therapy, say, do you do exposure and response prevention? Yes or no? And if they don't say they do not go see that person, because that is the most robust evidence-based behavioral treatment we have for OCD. right? And it takes people a long time to find practitioners, but hang on. There's lots of ways you can get care, but I think it's really important to be a discerning consumer. And I want to really empower people. Like, you should be interviewing your practitioners. Be a good consumer and be a good advocate for yourself. Don't just, don't worry about offending them. Anybody who treats OCD knows why you're asking us, and we welcome those questions.
Can you give us just that little background in ERP? Because my understanding of it is that it is under the CBT umbrella, but you're saying knowledge of CBT and being able to practice CBT isn't quite enough. You need to have expertise in ERP. So for people listening who might not know what those are, could you just give us a little understanding of what ERP is and why it's so effective?
Yes. So ERP is short for exposure and response prevention. And so it is a behavioral treatment. It's not really so much a talk therapy. It's a doing kind of therapy where you would choose on purpose to face one of these scary thoughts, experiences that you have in OCD. And that's the exposure part, right? You're facing a fear. And then the response prevention part is you're not going to do your ritual. So you're going to do it without avoiding. You're going to do it without like white knuckling, trying not to feel the anxiety. So your therapist is going to ask you, they're going to teach you a lot about how all of this works, and then they're going to invite you to, in a graduated way, face these fears, right? Without doing anything to make yourself feel better. And over time, and most of the clinical trials are about 3 to 4 months. It does take longer sometimes, and people have recurring symptoms sometimes. But most of the evidence base suggests that within like 3 to 4 months, you're going to see a significant decrease in your symptoms for most people, right? And there are different ways of thinking about how this works. Some people think of it as you habituate, which means you start to learn, right, through doing this behaviorally, your brain starts to learn it doesn't need to freak out every time it has this thought, right? So the next time it has the thought, you might be like, wow, I remember when I used to worry about that. What a weird thought that is. And then you go on about your day, right? Like, for example, I'll be like, ooh, I feel the urge to apologize again for maybe offending someone. I'll be like, I'm going to sit with that one and just let it go. And so it really teaches you, like, you're going to change your relationship with these kinds of private events so that they no longer are so bothersome. And if they do pop up again, you're going to know exactly what to do about it. So the difference, I would say it's a subset of CBT. And one thing that's important, an important difference, is it's exposure-based. Not all CBT is exposure-based. Here's how it could go wrong, right? Like, so CBT might work with, like, if you have these scary thoughts, they might talk to you about why it's a cognitive distortion and why you're catastrophizing, and, like, let's kind of think more about these thoughts. And if you're more of a ruminative person, and you're already doing cognitive rituals, they've given you a whole bunch more cognitive rituals to do about your worry thoughts.
My issue with that, exactly right, is that it's very tough to speak logic to these thoughts.
Exactly.
So in these moments where I'm having intrusive thoughts, I will have a debate internally, that's stupid. Why would you think that? Here's all the evidence why that isn't the case. Here's why it is. And at the end of the day, I just feel the anxiety of it. I feel the dread of it. And there's no way to logic myself out of that. The issue that I wanted to ask specifically about that is that if you're exposing me to my thought and not allowing me to perform the ritual that comes with that, that I understand. Like, I did a lot of light switches, and I was able to kind of just expose myself out of that. I just stopped doing it, and that was relatively easy. What I find much tougher to tackle is exposing myself to a thought, because it's not an action that I can just stop doing. So Could you just explain a little bit about
100%.
what the approach would be on that?
A good metaphor is think about Thanksgiving dinner. You have a relative who's super like blustery and loud and has completely different politics than you. And they're just going to keep talking. And the more wine they have, they're going to keep talking. And the more you talk to him or her, the more they're going to argue. So what do you do with that person if you don't want to be in that conversation? You be polite, you eat your dinner, maybe you listen to them, they're there, but you don't engage.
Yeah.
Right? So that's step one, non-engagement response. Now, step two, you could say, like, maybe I offended someone and they're going to not like me anymore or whatever. Maybe you did. Maybe you didn't. I don't know. So you can amp it up as an exposure and you practice being like, ooh, I really want to solve that. I want to ask for reassurance. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to rehearse it and be like, I don't know, maybe I did. Right? You can also amp it up even more and be like, you did offend them and they're never going to talk to you again. And you're going to end up old and alone and a spinster, kind of like, right? And that's a higher level exposure, right? So you can see the hierarchy. First, we're going to just let it be. Then we're going to kind of up it a little bit and we're going to get even more flexible. And then we're going to go after it and be like, oh yeah, OCD? Yep, that's right. I'm just a horrible person because I offended that person. And then that's it, right? And so what happens is you have this different way of relating to the stuff that shows up inside.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
It does. Thank you for sharing that. I have done this thing over probably my entire life where when something feels really challenging, and I've maybe catastrophized it, I've made it a big deal in my head, I've always gone to what's worst case scenario in this situation. Mm-hmm. You know, and even that is exaggerated. But then I learned to live with the worst case scenario. And then I'm able to say, okay, that's unlikely. That's unlikely. I get it out of the way. And now I can go into it knowing that I've already run through worst case scenario. I mean, is that protecting me or making it worse? Because I feel like...
tell me.
I don't know.
For you.
Well,
see, this is the thing, right?
That doesn't work for me, I'll tell you that.
Going to worst case scenario and
Yes,
and then identifying it as that's really not going to happen. You should just...
So think about it like this. You want to use, when you have a scary thought or something that really bothers you, you want to use the least effort possible, right? And there's a piece about really just letting yourself feel what shows up. Right, for what it is, not what it says it is. It's a scary thought, right? We're imagining these things. Our minds are imagining them for us. And so do we have to fix something that's imagined? Probably not. So think about what's the thing that's like the least effortful you could do, right? We're not going to... And you think about the example of the annoying relative, right? The second you turn, they're like, you looked at me. I'm going to talk. I'm going to talk to you about all that stuff you don't want to talk about. So we just try not to engage. And it does take practice.
You're like experiment in your head. Like, what makes me feel calm in this moment? Which direction am I going to go with this thought?
Well, here's the thing. We don't want to try to feel calm because if we're going to chase calm,
that's always been my go-to.
That's the avoidance piece, right?
Avoidance.
So
Alicia does have an avoidance.
Let me break it down.
Major
Let me break
avoidance.
it down. So when you have this kind of OCD, right, there's the scary thought that pops up, the beginning one in the string, like maybe I offended someone, maybe I harmed someone, maybe I whatever, right? We're not in charge of that. That's just going to pop up. Nothing we can do about that, right? But the next thing we do is try to make ourselves feel better by arguing with it, rationalizing it, talking to ourselves about it, rehearsing things in our head, whatever it is. That's the part we need to stop. That's the cognitive ritual. That's volitional, which means that we choose to do that. It doesn't feel like that because it's probably so second nature.
That doesn't feel that way.
Right?
Okay.
I know. But it's helpful to think about it like that. And then to start experimenting with, what if I just noticed that? You know, what if I pretend you're watching fish in an aquarium, right? And that scary thought that pops up is a fish. And you're just going to watch it. You're not going to jump in the aquarium with the fish and catch it and, do stuff. You're just going to let it kind of do what it's going to do. You're going to let yourself feel whatever shows up because it's not going to hurt you. It's going to be uncomfortable and you can handle it, right? And you're going to go on, and sometimes people find it very useful to just keep doing what they're doing, not to avoid or ignore, but just stay engaged in your life. And what you learn is the more you stay engaged in doing the things that really matter to you, like being with your family, your friends, taking care of yourself, doing things you enjoy. With this stuff, what you're doing is you're teaching your brain, it does not need to have this huge response when that thought pops up.
It's so counterintuitive, though.
Isn't
That
it?
is the thing, and that's
that
why
is
it
the
traps
thing.
people so badly. Because, let's say a robber comes into your house. You're not just going to be like, come on in, bud. I'm going to watch you do the stuff that, your every instinct is to get him out of the house, whether it's by calling the cops. You're not going to just, I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing here. But that is what we are required to do, and it is so counterintuitive. And
It is.
the issue I have with it, and because I think I've been longer at this than Alicia has, so in some ways I've built more tools than she has, and so everything you're saying about you notice a thought and then there's a compulsion that you're performing either mentally or physically, and you need to expose yourself to not doing that and sitting with the discomfort. I'm there for all that, and I think I've gotten pretty good at a fair amount of that just by practice. It's like lifting weights, you're building those muscles. But to me, where I still struggle is with the feeling. That feeling descends, and I think Alicia, you described it as like a battle in the brain, or it feels like that storm is starting.
Are we addicted to the feeling? Are we addicted to the chemical response to the thought?
I wouldn't say
willingly.
I would
No,
say
I don't want to be, but is it like a physiological response to the thought that maybe our bodies can not get out of in that moment, right? Because if you have a negative thought, your cortisol is going to go up. And for me, I lived in fight or flight. I don't know life without being stuck in fight or flight. Like I said, I've done all the things to try to get myself out of it. And so for me, when I have a really horrible thought and I get that sick feeling in my stomach and my cortisol shoots through the roof, now I'm spending the next half hour trying to calm myself down from a thought that was not invited.
Was not invited.
God, welcome here.
If you have a feeling that feels awful, of course you're going to do something to get away from, like make it stop. Of course, right? But the difference is this, right? And this is the counterintuitive piece I think that Liam is talking about, right? The robber example. It's not a real robber. OCD makes you think it's a real robber, and it makes it feel as real as a real robber, right? So objectively, it's going to feel that scary, right? And that's why the treatment it's tough and it works, right? And that's why we say we're talking about facing your fear. Like you're saying, making room for this feeling, learning that the human body is made to feel all of these emotions. And what if the emotion's not the problem? What if it's what we do about it, right? What if it's the more we push it and try to shove it down, the more it captures our awareness? What if I didn't try to make myself feel better? What if I just slowed down and let myself sit in this scary place, right? So when this is 2017, I took my daughter on a hike, right, to Everest Base Camp. And I
Wait, really?
For real.
Mount Everest?
Like
wow.
Mount Everest.
Oh, shoot.
Really cool. Like pretty amazing. Yeah. Highly recommend. And the smart person that I am with my PhD, failed to consider that perhaps my significant phobia of heights would come into play. So I didn't think about this at all. I just thought we're walking around. So I kept finding myself on these like super high cliff edges, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of feet drop. And I'm like panicking. I'm utterly panicking and I'm freezing. And when I freeze, I can't move and I feel like I'm going to lose my balance, right? So I'm like, I got this. I'm an exposure therapist. I'm going to do the things. I'm going to face the fear. And so what I noticed was I'm hiking, I'm on the cliff, I'm doing the thing, and it's not getting any easier. What's wrong? What's happening here, right?
Yeah.
So what I was doing was I noticed that I was staring at this little patch of ground just in front of each step, because I felt like if I took my eyes off that ground, I might somehow fly off the mountain into space. Right? I also, if there were really steep or narrow, scary parts, I would like rush over them as fast as I could, just get it over with, right? And I realized, I was like, oh crap, man, I'm doing what I like teach my clients to never do. I'm like totally white knuckling this. I'm doing everything I can to defend myself from feeling anxious. And I'm not really letting in the experience. And I was like, all right, I got to break this down. What do I got to do different? Well, I needed to look up, number one. And I'm like, I came here to see the mountains, and I'm looking at this patch of gravel, maybe, right? So I had to look up, terrifying. I had to slow down because I was rushing. And even scarier, standing still felt like I was going to lose my balance. I would start the freeze. And I had to just choose on purpose to do all of those things and let it in. Let it in, right? That's when it started to change. But there was one more piece that was really important that I want folks with OCD to hear, because this is critical. There were parts of this trail that were so scary. And I was like, you know what? I need help. And I would ask one of our guides, would you just hold my hand? And they did. And I did not beat myself up for that. And I think a lot of folks with OCD think when they can't get it right, when they don't get better, when they're not doing the hard thing, they're really hard on themselves. And I'm here to tell you, please don't do that.
I love that. I would never have asked for the guide's hand. As a man, I would have died on that mountain instead of holding his hand. And that is bad. I'm not saying that that is good. That is a bad thing.
That is the truth.
And I wonder if
There's
men,
so many people like that.
yeah, in your practice, if you have noticed that men struggle with that help thing a bit more than the women.
Teenagers, everybody. But I think everybody does. But it wouldn't surprise me at all if there was a difference in men. You know, just because of the way guys are enculturated and like the social rules about like it's okay for women to cry but not men. It's okay for guys to be mad but not women, and you know you have to be strong and all of this. And I think I have to say, and I'm gonna, and I really just deeply honest now, when I have worked with men and they have shown vulnerability or asked for help, I think it's the most amazing, beautiful thing. I'm like, this is a human who I really adore. This is just, I'm so proud of them because I know how hard it is. And I have a 20-year-old son, and like I really hope he learns that like he can ask for help when he wants it and he needs it, you know? So I just want to say that too. If people are feeling like, oh, I'm tough, I can handle this. Maybe you can. And should you? Do you have to? If help is available, if it could get you to where you want to go faster, right? Wouldn't you want that? Because OCD is just the struggle with it. Like you said, Alicia, earlier, like it takes so much time. It takes so much
energy.
Years, energy, exhaustion. You spend so much headspace.
You know what? I've spent my life trying to figure out what's wrong with me. I have been on this quest for my entire life trying to piece it together of like, okay, I did that thing. I should feel happy. Okay, I accomplished that thing. I feel I should feel joy. I have this, and it's been this like, so understanding there's a name, I can identify what's happening has been healing on its own. But I do want to ask, are you born with OCD, or does that develop later in life?
So we know that OCD is heritable, which means it's not a sure thing that if, you know, a first degree relative has it, you're going to get it.
Yeah.
But it means that if somebody in your family, a mother, father, a close relative has it, you're more likely to have it, right? It is also a stress sensitive illness. So for some people, they will experience a stressor and it will kick it off. There are different ages of onset. The most typical is in the teen years and young adulthood, although early childhood onset is also something that happens. We treated a lot of that at Brown. I was on a clinical trial for kids aged 4 to 9.
Wow.
And so it is something that can happen early. There's also a strep mediated form of OCD called PANDAS, right? And so what that one is there's a predisposition, a genetic predisposition, and when the individual, usually a child, gets strep, it's like that the next day they are acutely severe OCD.
Wow.
Right? And these cases started coming in that show up in ERs, and parents were like, what is happening to this child?
Yeah.
And I actually, one of my mentors at Brown, Henrietta Leonard, was one of the architects with Sue Sweeto of this research at NIH when they started to discover these cases. So there's different ways, right, into OCD. The other thing to know, too, is that, OCD doesn't always travel alone. Like, it can come with other things that are hard. Like, so for example, I work with a lot of kids and teens with OCD are 6 times more likely to experience depression when compared to children with OCD, right? So there's what we call them comorbidities. So it may come with other kinds of anxiety. With younger kids, it can come with tic disorders, ADHD.
ADHD. Oh, we're going to get into that. We're going to get into that, doctor.
Right? There's a huge overlap in autistic individuals with OCD, right? So that's another one. And that is something that gets missed because those two things can sometimes have things in common. And so that's really important to kind of tease apart. So yeah, so it can, so there's a lot of ways people can get OCD. It is biological, it is behavioral, it's stress mediated. And so it's important to kind of understand that there's a lot of complexity to how it shows up in people.
I just want to zero in on that ADHD thing because Alicia and I were talking, and I'm diagnosed with ADHD in addition to OCD. My wife is so lucky. And she's laughing in the background right now. I've actually started to wonder if I don't have ADHD and that I appear distracted because my OCD is so distracting to me. I'm locked into whatever that intrusive thought is or what my rituals might be, that I appear as someone with ADHD but don't actually have it. So I'm curious your thoughts on that.
That's an amazing and really, really excellent question. So here's the thing. When people have difficulty concentrating and when they're fidgety, there can be multiple reasons why. It could be you have an executive functioning deficit, which means that you need more stimulation than the average bear to feel calm and to get through things. Things with cognitive effort are hard, etc. But if you're depressed, for example, it's difficult to concentrate also. If you have OCD and you have a lot of images going on, you're doing some mental rituals, it's going to look like you're inattentive. Same thing with anxiety. And so usually you would need a neuropsychologist to kind of give you some testing to see and to tease apart what's going on with that.
And Alicia, I know you're curious about specifically with women, OCD.
Oh, in our cycles, yes. And what?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So how is PMDD? Well, first, if you're listening, you don't know what PMDD is. PMDD is something I've struggled with before I realized that I had OCD. It's premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And it's in your luteal phase about, I don't know, I think it's 8 to 10 days prior to your menstruation. You're heightened. Everything is heightened. Your
Everything.
depression, your anxiety, some people have suicidal thoughts. I guess there is zero information, at least that I have found, that connects OCD to PMDD, and I just would love to hear your thoughts on that.
What I would say is because OCD is stress sensitive and because it does involve these sort of emotional components, it would make sense that it's heightened. And a lot of my women clients or my young adult or my teen female clients, they see the same thing. And so what we start to do is we'll plan for that. Like, when is that happening? And can we sort of be proactive? We know your OCD is going to be louder.
Mm-hmm.
How do you want to handle that? How do you want to protect yourself from ritualizing? What kind of support do you need? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that's really important for people with OCD to know, that because it's stress sensitive, you can go through treatment successfully and be doing great. And then you hit a snag in your life and it ramps up again.
You derail.
Or it has a new phase. Yes.
Yeah. And you feel
And
like you're not making any progress, and then you're back to square, which we need to
Exactly.
emphasize. You are still making progress.
Correct.
You are
100%.
not ruining your life from a week of
No.
high stress.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I
Thank you
see
so much
that.
for saying that. You're 100% correct. And that's what I want people to know, is that you're not going backwards. This is just the course. And you know what to do. It's going to be harder those weeks, and then it's going to pass. You are not back at square one.
Tracking it for me is huge. Vocalizing it to Spencer and my family, even my kids. I say, hey guys, mommy's in a very sensitive time this week, so my patience might be running low. I'm going to put myself in timeout sometimes and have a mental break. I vocalize this to them, because if you're not sharing it, then you're hurting the people around you, because then they blame themselves. What did I do? Why is mommy upset? Did I say something to offend her? So for me, it's almost like I have to disclose a little bit. Hey guys, here's where I'm at. I'm feeling I might need a nap. I'm extra sensitive. I'm probably going to go work. And they're like, okay, do your thing. And they're supportive. That people cannot be
So
supportive
amazing.
if they do not understand what's going on. And it first takes us understanding what's going on with ourselves, right?
100%.
So,
And it's willingness to share that, right? And it's
Yeah.
also, I love that you do that, Alicia, because that's one of the things that's really important, is how do you take care of yourself while you're going through treatment, which is pretty hard, right?
Yeah.
It's works, and it's going to require your discomfort on purpose. And like, how do you take care of yourself, and how do you not beat yourself up, right? And show yourself some kindness as you walk through this very hard thing. And it sounds like you're doing a beautiful job with that. And I want people to hear that, and just props to
thank
you.
it doesn't always feel beautiful or seem beautiful. And,
I know.
it is a journey. And I have not taken medication for it. Imagine that. I've lived my whole life without being medicated. And it's
Same.
been a lot of trial and error. It's been a lot of pushing through. My husband's a very social person. And when we first started dating, he had no idea. The mask of those social events that I had to put on prior and be tough it out. You are not stupid. You are funny. You are loving. I would just go in my bathroom, do my affirmations, and be like, okay, here we go. We're going into this, and you're gonna do great. And I was like, why am I having to hype myself up? Does everybody do this? Does everyone have to go and be like, oh, the social anxiety was insane. So I have learned a lot on my own. I have just learned a lot on my own. I've been very aware, and I've been very uncomfortable. I have been so uncomfortable. And I think that's a huge part of speaking up, is reminding people that the exterior that you see and those moments of courage are not the entire story. Right. And there's so much behind the scenes that go on that people are unaware of. And when I was on social media sharing all the highlights of my life, I felt like I was doing my community a disservice, because I wasn't being 100% honest with what it took and the thoughts I had behind getting to that moment. And it isn't easy for me. This isn't all easy for me. It's extremely hard, and it takes a lot of hard work. and some days are better than others. But my husband said that the other day, he's like, you seem happier, honey. And I feel like you said earlier when we were chatting, that like I've come home to myself. Like there's this peace in knowing that I am building a community with people who have been struggling in silence. In fact, I got a text, and I want to read this to you if that's okay, from someone close to my heart, who said, I've been watching your stories and your Instagram, and I love what you're doing with Liam, and I want to share something with you. So if you don't mind, I'm going to read this really fast.
Sure.
I don't necessarily have an official diagnosis of OCD, but especially with all the challenges happening in my life, I feel like I have a heightened awareness of my habits. I obsess over making sure the doors are locked at night, sometimes even checking them 3-4 times before I can settle into bed. I drive past my house a few times to make sure that the garage door is down or that I turned off the stove, etc. Anything that could potentially lead to something bad happening is so hard for me to trust my initial action. Her husband has been so amazing and supportive. I'll be laying in bed and I ask him, are the doors locked multiple times, and that I need to go check them. He kindly gets up out of bed and checks the doors without any complaints, because he knows if he checks them, I can trust that they are locked. It's a crazy thing for sure. I started taking photos of the doors locked and the garage door down because that was the only way I could for sure know I did it. And then when I felt like I needed to go check again, I would look at the picture. It's so frustrating because I know it's a problem, but I don't feel like I can do anything about it. And every time I triple check something, it feels like it's feeding the compulsion. Is there testing that I can do for this to get an official diagnosis, or is it even worth it?
It is even worth it. It really is. And so let's talk a little bit about, like, how do you diagnose OCD? Right?
Yeah.
So there are some evidence-based measures that we use. They are interview-based. One is called the Y-Box, the Yale-Brown OCD scale, basically. And then there's the Diamond, which is a similar scale. They come in versions for kids and adults. And they ask specifically about recurrent intrusive thoughts, and they'll go through lists, and then they'll ask, what do you do about those thoughts? And if you have stuff popping into your head, like doubt, like that your person who texted you, and you feel like you have to do these rituals or else you're going to be really, really distressed or something bad is going to happen, right? That is a sign that OCD is possibly there. And again, having someone diagnose you, it's really helpful to have an evidence-based measure used, right? It doesn't just come from like, tell me all about yourself. We really want to have the data behind that, and that's really helpful. And it's so worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And I hope that
I hope she's listening, right?
I hope she's listening.
Yeah.
And
I think
can I say one more thing?
Please.
Like, I feel like it's so isolating to have this. And you don't, first of all, a lot of people don't know they have it. Number one.
I thought I had multiple personality disorder. I thought I was going insane. I was like, okay, why am I this way sometimes and this way sometimes and this way? And people don't know what they're getting. And,
correct.
I have basically told myself I have everything because of not knowing.
Because of not knowing. And so it's like we're all in these little silos and nobody knows. So I want people to hear about the International OCD Foundation, which is an amazing nonprofit organization, and they run in-person and virtual conferences, not just for clinicians and researchers like me, but also for all of us with lived experience. And I cannot tell you how many times I have been to these conferences over the last several decades, and I'll take my clients, they will come with their families, and they're like, oh my God, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
Holy moly. And like you go from being 1 in 100, where like you feel like you're the only one, to 1 of 100. And you see these friendships develop where people go back and they visit and they hang out and they go and they get their conference stuff and then they go do fun things together in whatever city. And I cannot recommend, like, I think that is an incredibly powerful experience. There is another organization that we work with sometimes called OCD Game Changers. And it is specifically for people with lived experience OCD. And for example, they are doing the very first OCD Game Changers event in Ireland. And we're supporting them. There are other people who are supporting them. But basically, they're gathering people with OCD to come together and talk and meet each other. and really talk with somebody who gets it. There's something very powerful and essential about that experience.
Yeah, I've often said that when I was in the darkest parts of my experience with OCD, the number one thing I found to be helpful was talking to other people going through it. You just have this, it makes you feel less alone, less like a freak, whatever it is. And you share tools, you share resources like the IOCDF. That was how I came to find out about the IOCDF, was exactly through those conversations. And you've given us so much of your time, but I do just want to ask just
Sure.
a couple of more questions
Of
because
course.
this is so helpful. I feel like Alicia and I, we're doing me search today, like figuring
I
out.
am so happy to be here. It's so fun hanging out with you too.
I
So
know, it
you can
really
ask me
is.
questions all day long.
You were mentioning that
We might.
neither of you takes medication for your OCD. I am on an SSRI. There was a long journey that got me to that point where I finally decided I needed to go that route. And I'm wondering just what your view is
On
on
that.
pharmaceutical interventions for OCD,
Yep.
sort of your take on it broadly, how you've seen it impact some of your patients. Just curious to get your thoughts on
Yeah,
it.
because I feel very overwhelmed with what to start. I don't want to make my symptoms worse. They
Yes.
scare me, but I'm pro whatever it takes
Okay.
to help. So,
So let's start with the evidence base. And there is an evidence base that suggests that behavioral treatment, which is specifically exposure and response prevention, and SSRIs, pharmacotherapy, either alone or together, are very, very helpful for OCD. And so in my perspective, yes, I have seen them work for lots of people. I have seen them not work for some people. So my perspective is this: I like people, whether you're on meds or not, right? I think you have to continue learning behaviorally what to do about the OCD. It's just really important. That being said, lots of people come into treatment. It's really hard for them to get any traction. And if they go, 5 or 6 weeks and we're not seeing lots of engagement and doing the treatment, I'm going to suggest, why don't we try a trial of meds and see how that works? So I talk about it with my kids like training wheels, right? You're going to learn to ride the bike, but sometimes you need a little help. This is going
Yeah.
to give you a little bit of help, right? And we have a lot of data showing that you shouldn't be on these forever, right? But you should be on them long enough to successfully get through treatment and then for a certain period of stability after that. When that's done, you can work with your clinician and your psychiatrist, hopefully, to titrate back down. And we just treat that like a new exposure hierarchy. Sometimes it does take a few tries to get the right one. So this is not the kind of thing that you want to go to your general practitioner for. You want to go to actually a
or
psychiatrist.
Reddit. Don't go on Reddit and read
Don't
other.
go.
I made that mistake and I was like, yep, not
Yeah,
taking
not
anything.
helpful.
I got mine in an alley from a guy
Oh,
named
that's
Brad.
really the best place.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, you want to like, it's really great to find someone who knows their way around OCD as a psychiatrist, but at the very least talk to a psychiatrist who knows, like, they'll know what the side effect profile is. They'll look at different things and hopefully they'll titrate you up slowly. The other thing to know is that with SSRIs or SRIs, it usually takes 4 to 6 weeks for them, maybe longer, to start showing an effect.
I have a
Sure.
question and it's a little bit going in the other direction. As someone who struggles with the intrusive thoughts, less of the behavioral compulsions of OCD, what is the difference between the two and why haven't I developed the behavioral side
That's a great question.
as much as somebody who has more obvious OCD? I'm not saying I don't have any. I do. But
Yeah, you do have some tapping.
I do have some tapping, which I didn't realize I did a ton of. Actually, I posted a story this morning. I watched it back and I was like, wow, I'm tapping the entire time. Is that just that's just a calming compulsion? That's just me trying to, what's with the tapping?
Well, it depends. That's a great question. And so if you have a clinician, they might have you start to notice, like, be more aware of the tapping. When are you doing it? And how does it work? And what's the thing that triggers the tapping? Is there a recurrent intrusive thought or an uncomfortable feeling?
Well, I woke up
What?
very anxious this morning, and it was very negative loop going on in my head of doubting this entire podcast. And I've had this story in my mind since I was little that I'm stupid. Imagine going through life thinking you're just a complete idiot and you're stupid. And it has kept me from doing really cool things because I
Wow.
think, well, I can't do that. I'm stupid. Right. And so I would always go to Spence. I'm like, okay, tell me I'm smart. Someone tell me I'm smart. And so,
And then he shouldn't do it, actually, right? He shouldn't tell you you're an idiot, but he shouldn't reassure you in that moment.
no, and
Am I-
he doesn't anymore. And I feel like I have
Where am
found
I wrong, doctor, about that?
I have found
You're right.
ways to prove to myself that I am not.
Right, she got like really thick rimmed glasses. You kept on like this.
Well, I think because, school was tough for me. Again, the ADHD stuff. I was raised in a really
You
traumatic
too?
home. There was a lot of stuff as a child, and so I wasn't able to focus. Then I developed this sense of identity that I'm just stupid because I didn't focus in school and I don't know all these things that people know. I feel like I'm very life smart, but that doesn't help when you've developed OCD.
So I want to say something about another treatment for OCD that also has an evidence base, and it's considered an excellent second-line treatment for OCD about exactly what you're talking about, Alicia. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy. It also is an exposure-based therapy, and it targets helping people with this thing that they call psychological flexibility. In sum, what this is when you have a story about yourself that pops up, like maybe I'm stupid, right? If you get trapped by that, you spend your whole life tangling with it, trying to prove to yourself that you're not, and all of this, right? Which makes that story stick around more and be more prominent. And so in ACT, what we teach is, let's stop trying not to have something and let's think about, so tell me more about all those cool things that you would do. Like, if we could do away with this story, just set it aside for a second. Tell me about the really cool things you want to do in your life. And we start building treatment around how, like, you moving in that direction. Now, the trick is, here's where the exposure comes in. When you move in that direction, that story's going to pop up, jump in your way, and go, but you're stupid, you can't.
Well, this is what's happening right now. I am doing the thing. I am talking publicly. I'm exposing myself.
You are! That's exactly
Along the
right.
way, I have been telling myself, those intrusive thoughts are popping in, and I'm going, nope, I'm not. And if I sound stupid, who cares?
What
If I
you
have
do
a moment where I sound stupid,
So what if you do this? What if you say, maybe I am, maybe I'm not, I'm going anyway. Right?
Acceptance and commitment.
Bingo. So let me.
At the same time.
So people
I don't
know
like
this.
this. Maybe I am.
And notice that thought and be like, I don't like that thought. You don't have to like the thought or want the thought, right? But what you can, what does tangling with it do? It usually makes it stick around more.
Yeah.
So like when I was a young academic and you have to be fabulous, I always thought I'm too stupid to do things. Always. Because I have ADHD and I'm good at a lot of stuff, but I'm freaking awful at numbers. I just can't. I'll be like, mathing is hard. I can't. My brain has the dumb. I can't. So I would have panic attacks at professional conferences whenever I would have to give a talk that had stats.
Yeah, because you have to do a fair amount of statistics to get your PhD.
Yes. And so I stopped giving talks. I started avoiding them and telling my students, like, oh, I got a great professional opportunity for you. Here, go. And they thought I was a great mentor, and I was hiding. It was all a lie. I was hiding. I did want them to be successful too, but so one day I just realized, like, I can't be of service if I keep saying no.
Yeah.
This matters enough to me that I'm going to start saying yes. So I did. And it was really hard, more exposure. But here's my trick. This is what I did. So I'd walk out and the panic would begin. And if you haven't had a panic attack, you guys might have, but like for people who are listening, who, if you haven't, it feels like a volcano's like, and
awful.
you know it's going to happen. You're like, oh, no, 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 no. And it's just like, it's terrible. So I'd notice this feeling, and then I would just kind of breathe and say to myself, do you want this talk to be about being of service or you managing your anxiety? Pick one. And I'd pick, all right, I want to teach well. I want to be of service.
Yeah.
And then the next thought was, well, then do what a competent speaker would do right now. And usually that was something like you connect with your audience, you make eye contact, which if you have social anxiety is terrifying. It's the hardest, right? And I would literally do that. I would be like, and sometimes I'd even tell them, you know, I'm just feeling like I'm on the edge of a panic attack and I'm just going to take a second. It's nice to be here. And I would look at people, I would catch their eyes, and then I would teach.
That's exactly what I've been doing with this whole podcast, because this is hard. It is hard for me. It may people may think this is easy. This is extremely hard for me, and I'm just
glad you're here.
I keep coming back to people need this. People need this, and that is my why. This is not about my fear. This is not about me thinking I'm stupid. This is not about me. This is not about me. Although I am learning an immense amount from you, and that is so beautiful. But it's about
I am feeling super, super like almost teary listening to you. I'm so inspired.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Oh.
See, I just
That's what it's about.
This is what happened.
But that's the power of this, right? When you see somebody really reaching for their joy, even when it's hard, that's what ERP is. That's what's possible here. When you really do this work, and you are really doing it. So keep going, man. You're like a beacon. Keep doing it.
Thank you. It was really
She
sweet.
is.
That was really sweet.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Coyne.
So
This has
welcome.
been unbelievable. Is there any kind of last message you want to leave people who might be listening, struggling with this, or they have a family member who's struggling? Any message you'd want to leave them with?
Please know that there is hope. Please do not give up. It is never too late, even if you've had this for a long time, even if you aren't sure like what to do, know that there's treatment that works. There are people out there just like you, just as scared, and who have walked through this or who are walking through it. Connect. Let yourself connect with them. Take that first step. You will not regret it.
You are not your OCD.
You are not.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Coyne. We
So
appreciate
welcome.
it.
So can I make an
pleasure.
appointment with you for tomorrow?
Do you guys want to do this again next week? This is really fun.
Can I give you one quick confession before we go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other day, so what I've noticed is that I keep realizing obsessions and compulsions that I've been doing my whole life without realizing it until I was diagnosed. And so every few weeks there's like, oh my God, I did that. The other day I had this realization that when there's a song on and I'm singing along with it, if the word die is in the song, I don't say that word. I skip over that word as I'm singing, or I'll say lie instead. So I'll be in the car being like, and lie with a smile if the world was ending. And I just don't say die. I say some other thing.
Yeah. Well,
What-
you know
really
what you
weird.
need to
What have
do.
you told yourself that if you say it will happen? And do we all?
That my loved ones are going to die.
Oh yeah. We attach meaning onto something. That's the interesting part. Is I say if I do this and this. Oh, here's one for me. I realize if I eat something that has a lot of different options. Let's say it's about. I don't eat Skittles anymore, but I used to do this. If I ever had a bag of Skittles, I would say, okay, if I pull the red one, that means this is going to happen. And I would pull the red one. I'd be like, oh shit. No, and then I would search, and then I was like, it was like this thing of if I do this, this is what's going to happen. What?
Magical thinking.
I had no
Magical
idea
thinking.
that was OCD.
That's the thing. Eat all of the red ones. And say die all the time.